Okay, in this video we're going to be linking education policies to each of the goals. And when you're doing that, it's really important that you're making specific note of particular policies and you're using words like creating a more adaptive, creative and critical thinking workforce, that we're able to have the skills necessary for the current workforce and things like that. So in terms of strong and sustainable growth, when you're linking education to strong and sustainable growth, the main thing is it's improving the quality of our labour force. Boosting our productive capacity because our existing workforce are able to produce more goods and services, and also creating a more productive, adaptive and dynamically efficient workforce. This should help to ease skill shortages or bottlenecks which limit production, and also help to reduce labour costs for businesses, which along with increased productivity will lower prices and make us firms more willing to supply. So the increase in productivity will help to reduce prices, and in combination with lower wage pressures will help to lower prices, which can help the firms become more willing to supply and also boost our international competitiveness, which will increase aggregate demand and employment. In terms of inflation, better education reduces production costs for many reasons. One, we become more productive, so we're generating more GDP per hour, which is keeping prices down. The increased competition for jobs keeps wages down. And citizens are more likely to remain in the labour force, which boosts competition and also reduces wage pressures. So the increase in productivity reduces production costs, as well as the increased participation in competition should also help to keep prices down because of lower wages. In terms of full employment, any spending on education can create employment in the short term because we need more teachers, supervisors and trainers. And in the long term, it should reduce structural unemployment because workers have more of the skills necessary to find employment. So there's less of a mismatch in terms of skills. This helps to ease skill shortages and reduce wage pressures, and again helps to keep our international competitiveness high because of the lower prices. First step, more jobs in the short term for teachers, supervisors and trainers. There's less structural unemployment because there's less people that don't have skills that are in demand. And then finally, the lower prices and reduced wage pressures helps to boost competitiveness, and that creates jobs as well. In terms of living standards, it leads to lower prices. More educated people are likely to generate higher income, so it helps to boost purchasing power. There's less market failures which occur when there's less from an under-allocation of resources to education. So there might be less crime because educated people, as a general rule, are less likely to engage in crime. There's less structural unemployment, which helps to boost purchasing power as well. So from a material perspective, we've got lower prices, higher incomes, reduced structural unemployment. And from a non-material aspect, there's lower crime rates, increased confidence that comes with better education, less stress, greater connections to people around the world, and overall a higher quality of life. In terms of weaknesses, often funding needs to be used for a long period of time before we actually see improvement in educational outcomes, so it can take a long time to have its desired effect. Educational outcomes in Australia, despite all these initiatives, are not up to standard. So around 30% of 15-year-olds do not reach national literacy standards. Australia is falling behind in terms of OECD compared to other OECD countries. In mathematics, Australia's student performance has declined by equivalent about half a year over the last 5 to 10 years, so we're getting worse at maths. The current education funding model means that too many resources are directed to non-government or private schools, so not enough. There's a lack of inequality is another focus. So not only are we moving further and further behind, but there's not enough funding for disadvantaged groups. And also the government's push towards fiscal consolidation is making it hard to provide general funding for education because they have a lack of money to spend. So not enough spending on disadvantaged schools, not enough spending overall because of fiscal consolidation, and the fact that we're getting further and further behind, as well as the fact that it takes a long time to have its desired effect, are all weaknesses. Let's go through 2 questions just right at the end of this video. Explain what is meant by training and education. In your answer, refer to human capital. Spending on education and training includes all spending on materials and wages and fees to support families, or investment in capital and investment spending, and that can include spending at a primary, secondary, vet training, university, TAFE or vocational level. Access to more education and training improves the quality of the skills of the current workforce, which helps to boost productivity and expand our productive capacity. By investing in education, we're able to improve the quality of our human capital, so our collective skills and knowledge, and achieve a more productive workforce. Describe the link between training and education, dynamic efficiency and structural unemployment. Better quality training leads to a more dynamically efficient workforce because we're likely to have the skills that they need to match the ever-changing demands for workers. By multi-skilling employees and being more adaptive to changes in technology, they're more equipped for the demands of the current workforce. Examples include training employers on how to code or use robotics, or teaching high schools critical thinking skills. So they're examples of what we can do to make our workforce more dynamic. This helps to reduce structural unemployment in the long term because we're able to adjust to changes in the economy. A more skilled workforce allows us to adapt to rapidly changing technological and structural changes. So the key things are we're giving them skills to make them more dynamic. Provide some examples like coding and robotics and critical thinking. This reduces structural unemployment because they are more adaptive to changes in demand, and therefore they can meet the changes in our ever-changing workforce.